Is $1 million actually enough to retire in Singapore? Or is that number just a nice round figure people repeat without ever checking the math? Here's what's strange. Ask 10 people if $1 million is enough to retire on, and 9 of them will say yes without hesitation. It sounds like a lot. It sounds like the finish line. But nobody ever asks the follow up question: enough for what? Enough for how long? Enough starting when? Let's slow down and actually look at this properly. Picture a couple in their early 30s, both work office jobs in the CBD. Combined income around $11,000 a month. They've done reasonably well. CPF is growing, they've got some savings in a broker account, and somewhere along the way they picked a number: $1 million. Hit that, and they're free. It's a nice story, clean, simple, motivating. The problem is it treats retirement like a single number instead of what it actually is: a monthly cash flow problem that has to survive 30, maybe 40 years. Here's the big idea for today. $1 million isn't a retirement plan. It's just an input. What actually determines whether you can retire comfortably is how much of that million you spend every year, how long it needs to last, and what inflation does to it while you're not looking. Let's put real numbers on this. Say you retire at 55 with your $1 million sitting in a mix of investments in CPF. A common rule of thumb is to withdraw around 4% a year. On $1 million, that's $40,000 a year, or a little over $3,300 a month. Now, $3,300 a month in Singapore, is that comfortable? For some households, that covers HDB living, hawker meals, transport, healthcare, and a bit of travel. For others, especially those used to condo living or private healthcare, it feels tight almost immediately. This is where most people stop calculating and start assuming. They picture their current lifestyle staying exactly the same, forever, on autopilot. But lifestyles don't freeze. Costs don't freeze either. Let's talk about inflation, because this is the part almost nobody accounts for properly. If inflation runs at just 3% a year, prices roughly double every 24 years. That means the same lifestyle that cost $3,300 a month today could cost around $6,600 a month by the time you're in your late 70s. Your $1 million didn't shrink, its buying power did. Think of it like a bucket of water with a slow leak. From the outside, the bucket looks completely full, but by the time you actually need that water, years later, a noticeable amount has quietly disappeared. That's inflation working on your retirement fund every single year you're not paying attention. So does that mean $1 million is actually not enough? Not exactly. It depends entirely on 3 things most people never sit down and calculate: your expected monthly spending in today's dollars, your expected retirement length, and how your money continues to grow or shrink while you're spending it. Let's walk through a more complete example. Say our couple wants to maintain a monthly lifestyle equivalent to $4,000 in today's money, and they plan for a 30-year retirement from 55 to 85. Using a withdrawal strategy that adjusts for inflation each year and assuming their remaining investments still grow at a modest rate after they retire, $1 million can realistically support that lifestyle, but with very little room for surprises. One major healthcare event, one prolonged market downturn early in retirement, and the math gets uncomfortable fast. Now here's something people almost never factor in: CPF LIFE. For Singaporeans, CPF isn't separate from this $1 million figure. It's often part of it, and it changes the entire picture. CPF Life provides a monthly payout for as long as you live, which means you're not relying purely on your own investment portfolio lasting exactly the right number of years. It's less flexible, but it removes one of the biggest fears in retirement planning: the fear of outliving your money. This is where most people misunderstand the whole concept of $1 million retirement. They treat it as one giant pile of cash they'll personally manage for 3 decades. In reality, for most Singaporeans, retirement income comes from several buckets working together: CPF life payouts, investment withdrawals, maybe rental income if there's a paid-off property, sometimes part-time work in the early retirement years, not out of necessity but by choice. When you look at it as one pile of money that has to do everything alone, $1 million feels fragile. When you look at it as one part of a larger system, it starts looking a lot more solid. But here's where things get interesting, because the amount of money isn't actually the biggest variable in this whole equation. Your spending is. Two people can retire with the exact same $1 million and have completely different outcomes, purely based on lifestyle. One person needs $3,000 a month. Another needs $6,000. The first person's $1 million could comfortably last their entire retirement. The second person's $1 million might run dry while they're still active enough to enjoy more. This is the part almost nobody talks about when discussing that headline number. Retirement isn't primarily an investing problem. It's primarily a spending design problem. The investing matters, but the spending plan is what actually determines whether the number works. So where does this leave someone who's currently building toward that $1 million target? The real question isn't, can I hit $1 million? Most disciplined savers in Singapore, especially dual income households, can realistically get there over 20 or 25 years of consistent saving and investing. The real question is, what monthly lifestyle does that $1 million need to support, for how many years, and with what backup if something goes wrong? Once you flip the question from a single number to a monthly cash flow target, everything becomes clearer. You stop chasing an arbitrary milestone and start building toward an actual outcome. So, can you really retire with $1 million in Singapore? For some people, yes, comfortably, with room to spare. For others, it might fall short unless spending is adjusted or supplemented. And for many, the honest answer is, it depends entirely on decisions they haven't made yet. The number on your bank statement was never the finish line. It's just one part of the equation. The real finish line is understanding exactly what that number needs to do for you, for how long, and building a plan flexible enough to handle the years you can't predict. That's not just retirement planning. That's designing a life you actually get to enjoy, on your own terms, long before the day you decide to stop working.